Welcome back to our Deer Creek sampler. Today we're going to make our first two blocks, and the first one is Square Exchange and the second block is called Path Through the Woods. The first thing I want to point out to you when you look at these blocks is both of them have 4 patches in the 4 corners. So looking at this, and now let me show you this one more time. And you'll notice it also has 4 patches in the 4 corners. So we're going to start today by grouping those 4 patches and feeding them through under the machine. That'll be the first thing that we sew. All right, here we go. One of the things that I like to do is I like to start with my needle in the down position, and I have a tool that I use all the time. Everybody has one, and this is a seam ripper. So what you're using this for is like the point of a stylus. If you have that, that's cool. Basically, I like to separate the pieces that I've stacked up, and I'm going to start sewing now and feeding those under the machine. And I have a leader on. A leader is just a folded piece of fabric. And that piece of fabric gets my stitching started so that when I go on to this piece that I'm doing, it's securely locked. Then just push the next piece right up under there so that it just follows the first piece that you sewed. And then you'll notice with my machine, you may have this. It's a presser foot lifter, and I just have to turn that button on my machine, and the presser foot automatically, when I stop, it will raise just a little bit, and boy does that make it easy for me to slide something under there. So I've sewn now 4 of these right away, and what I wanted to show you is I'm going to clip those threads, but sometimes I like to end not on a piece but on an ender. And the reason for that is so that the stitches are secure. Now I'm going to just continue sewing, and in just a few minutes, and I'll sew the other pieces that we need. We're actually going to cut these apart, and I'm going to press these seams open. So let me go right over here to the iron, and you can leave them all chained together if you like. And then just press to the dark side. So you just want to flip over the darks, and you can pick up your iron and press from the top side of the fabric, not the wrong side, okay? And because I had the other pieces light side up, I have to flip it over so I can get the dark side. And then I'm going to separate them. Now this process is going to go pretty quick. You'll be making 8 sets of these. I don't need to make 8 sets. You know what? I'm looking for my scissors. Now you know this is real. If you had to stop and look for your scissors, I bet you've done that a few times. So let's just cut these apart, and they're ready to go. And I'll cut the leader and the ender off. All right, here we go. So there's my 4 patches, and I'm going to group those together over here. Try not to let my chair get away from me. Okay, here we go. So let's put these pieces together so that the darks are staggered, top and bottom like this. Put them right sides together. And they're going to be nested right here in the center because we've pressed the seams to the dark. So let's do 2 of these, just so you get the idea. All right, here we go. We'll just start with a leader and sink our needle. The main reason I'm sinking that needle too is I don't want the threads to pull out. And I know if you've been doing a lot of piecing, like I do, this will happen to you, and it gets kind of frustrated, and you have to stop and rethread your machine, and we don't want to do that. It's a time waster. So just make sure they're all snuggled up together when you put them under there. Keep the edges together. and just feed those right through there. Use the point of that seam ripper to hold it down, and this basically eliminates you having to do a pin, because you'd have to move the pin anyway. Alright, I'm going to just trim that seam right here and press that open, and we will have some 4 patches. So this will go pretty quick. Now I'm just going to roll over here, aren't I lucky? And that'll make it even faster. So I'm just going to press these open nice and flat, and you will have some 4 patches. Now you know I've already made them ahead of time, but you can see them now, and they're so simple and easy to make. Then the next pieces of these blocks, if you look at them, and I want to show you a couple more of the pieces and parts that you'll be making, and that's the 2-patch system. See these 2 squares together? Okay, in the square exchange you have the 2 squares that are sewn together, but in Path Through the Woods is kind of a unique piece. You have 1 large square and 2 smaller rectangles on either side. So we're going to sew those now, and we'll have those units made. All right, here we go. Put your leader on, sink your needle, and let's start. I'm actually going to pick up my Path Through the Woods piece. Well, no, I'm not. I changed my mind. I'm going to do the 2 patches first. In a minute I'll explain why. Here comes the other one. I'm just doing 2 of these. Again, to just show you that any process that you see, anything in these blocks that are the same type of units, and you're going to repeat them, you may as well chain sew them. I have tried my best to group these blocks so that they are very similar, okay? And you'll notice the similarity in them. They are both 5-patch blocks, and those 5-patch blocks, I might pull this a little closer to me. Basically, you're going to press this to the red, because the red's the darker of the 2. I've got red and tan squares, and I'm going to flip it over so the red's on the right side, and then I'm going to push the seam to the red. So now we have these types of units made. I'm going to throw these out here for you to see. There you go. So you've got your 4 patches, you've got your 2 patches. Now the other unique piece that we're going to do is the piece that has the 2 small rectangles. So drop the presser foot, sink the needle, and let's start right here. I'm going to start with the light tan on this one. I have both of these squares or rectangles on top of the square at the same time, and I'm going to sew their opposite sides, and you'll see. This is going to go so fast, so if you're just making 1 block, you'll have 4 of these units. But for today's sewing example, I'm just showing 2, because they'll all be made the same way. It'll be the same process. So I'm going to cut in between, and I'm going to turn this around. And then I'm going to be sewing on the dark side of the square. I'll put another folded piece over here and start off. Put the needle down, sink it, and here we go. Start my stitching on that leader. That way I know those stitches are locked. I know how many of you have sewn a bunch of patches, and where you first started your stitching, they were coming loose. And that's usually because it takes a few stitches for the machine to lock the stitching. And I've just found that to happen so many times, more than once, that I just kind of got tired of fooling with it. And I decided the leader and ender situation would be much better. Alright, so now we just want to cut these in between, and we're ready to press them. Here we go. Now in this case, you could press them all to the center square, or you can press them both out, whatever works. And the reason why, you'll see when you start putting this block together, these seams, these particular seams, will never come in contact with the other seams. So they won't be something that you have to worry about butting up against another seam and nesting. They'll always be separated. Now, here's these units. So when I put these out here, you're seeing the examples of the different units you're going to make. And the only remaining piece to this is the square itself in the center where they all connect. So now what I'd like to do, I'm going to go over here to the wall where I actually have all of these sewn. And I've made all those units that we just showed you on the machine. So I have them laid out back on these boards that we talked about in the intro tape. And you can see the 4 patches are turned so that when this winds up being sewn, the blue will be the color facing in. And if you didn't like that, you can easily audition it and turn it around and say, no, I think I want the green on the inside. So it's whatever you want. Feel free to move it around any way you want. The same thing goes for the 2 patch. If you decide you don't want the red on the inside, you can easily flip this around and have the tan. So whatever decision you make there is your decision. That's your choice. The block will still be the same block. So now what I want you to notice is we actually have a 9 patch. This is an uneven 9 patch in that the units are not the same width, but you're going to sew this together like a 9 patch, and you're going to basically pick this up row by row. So there's a skinny row here in the center, and these 2 rows are equal. And when I'm sewing a row, I'd like to show you now what I do. And I'll take this board over to the machine and chain sew one of them. But before I do that, I want to point out that the second block is virtually the same thing. So you've got your 4 patches on the end. In this situation, I have the 3-part unit, and they are all connecting in the middle and through this bottom half and the top half. So this block also would be sewn back together like a 9 patch. So that would be row 1, row 2, and row 3. But in the interest of just showing it on the video, we're going to just sew one of them. So if you were at your machine, the first thing I want you to do, you're going to get a habit of this. Put that leader down, sink the needle, and then pick up the first 2 units. So I'm going to pick up from the top. I'm going to flip that small 2-piece over, and then I'm going to sew that. Now, in this case, because I had it turned with the red in the center, I actually, if I want the tan in the center, it would be set up so it's nesting. So if I want the red, I might have to press the seam towards the tan so that it's nesting. And for our purposes, I'm putting the red in the center this time, and I'm just going to push that seam out of the way. I can use my seam ripper to make that happen. So here we go. Let's get going with this and start shoving this under. And I'm going to make sure these 2 are nesting together. Hold that seam up. There we go. Other seam down. Make sure this matches at the bottom. Now, before I get to the very end, I'm going to pick up the center of this unit block, and I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together, and I'm going to add them on right underneath here. Here we go. And then the next one that would follow. And here we are. So just push these under, and then I'm having to fold my seam allowance back the other way just because I had pressed towards the red but that's not really a big deal. It's no problem. Okay, I'm going to clip these threads. I'm going to open this back up, and I want to show it to you back on the board. And then you're going to notice that I've got this much of the block sewn together. And it's all staying together with a little thread link. Now I'm going to pick up the next pieces. I'm actually going to lay all of them on at the same time. And I'm going to bring this over to the machine. I'm not pinning. I hope you noticed that. I'm not pinning because I feel very comfortable that I can make this happen with my trusty seam ripper. So here we go. I'm going to need another leader. As once again, I'm starting a new seam. Sink the needle. Here we go. I'm going pretty fast, which you don't have to feel like, oh, I've got to go this fast. No, you don't. You'll be at home. You won't be on a video, so you won't have to sew too fast. We're going to piece this one in the center. My little board's trying to travel with me. And here we go. This flipped up on me. There we go. Got to keep it straight. There's the last piece. It's going down. And underneath I need to push that red seam back so that this is nested. Okay. I got it. Now I'm going to push that down with my seam ripper. And there we go. Alright, now I want you to see this because it's actually all pinned together with threads, which I love this method. Then I call it thread pinning because, and what I'm doing real quick is I'm taking these leaders off because I'm going to use them again, but not there. So here's the first row, here's the second row, and here's the third row. Now at this point, you could go to the iron and you could press these and then do your next sewing. If I were at home and I was doing this in my studio or wherever you sew, I would take the time right now to press it. But because I'm here, we've got the camera, we don't want it to get boring, I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip it up and I'm going to sew the first row. So we don't want to hold you back. But you're at home, you'll take your time and do it all the way you should. So we push that needle down again, we've got our leader on, and here we go. Now when I come up to a seam intersection, if anything is not flipped in the right direction, I'm going to flip it with my seam ripper and make it do what I want it to do. So you're in charge. Push your fabric the way you need it to go so it's going to lay well when you get to the final end of this. And here we go. You're basically making your seams interlock. And it's really one of the best methods ever invented. and quite frankly, most of the time this is the method I'm going to use. Alright, so we have the first row sewn. I'm just going to turn this around. And here we go. This is the second row and the final row. And you will have a finished block. So you can see how fast this is going to go. Put a new leader on. Sink the needle. And here we go. You're going to get used to this. At first, I struggled with it. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I bothering with all this? But, excuse me, I have to say, it truly did help me out. And I think that I resolved the problem of the patchwork being unsewn when I first started sewing. The pieces weren't always locking. Okay, I've got to have a drink. And you always should have a trusty coffee cup, tea cup, whatever you're going to drink, water by your side. Ah, feel better. Okay, here we go. I hope this video is coming off real, because this is how I really am. This is where I really sew. And this is my real space. Now I have moved it around a little bit so it would be video friendly, but this is basically what I do all the time. I love patchwork. Look at that. There's your block. Let me hold it up. Now obviously we're going to press that. It's going to lay flat like the other one, but look how fast that went together. Now your other block, Path Through the Woods, would be assembled exactly the same way. So I'll roll over here, and here's Path Through the Woods. So again, you're going to make a 9-patch block, and you're just going to fold this unit over here, just like this. Your center square over here, and then the other 3-patch unit over here, and you're going to start sewing up here, and you're just going to feed one in after the other. Once this grouping is chained together, you'll flip it back over, and then you'll add your 3rd piece. So it will go together the exact same way as the other block, and it'll be so simple. When these blocks are done, they're going to measure out, and if you don't mind, I'll just kind of see if I can do it on a mat here. This one's too small of a mat, but let me just tell you, have confidence in me. These are going to be 13 inches with seam allowance, which might seem odd, but it's because there are 5 equal distributions of patches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments. And what happens here is you want them to divide equally, and to get that measurement to divide equally, I had to use a factor of 2.5, which I thought was a very friendly number and that we could all do it very easily. So that was the reason for it to be 12.5 when it's finished and sewn in the quilt, and it'll be 13 inches with seam allowance. That basically concludes our lessons for today. The next time you see me, I'm going to be doing the windy days and odd scraps, which at that time I'm going to introduce the half square triangle technique. Thanks so much. I'll see you soon.